Welcome, everyone, to the regular meeting of the Public Works and Infrastructure Committee for July 13th, 2023. I'm Andrew Johnson, and I'm the chair of this committee. And at this time, I will ask the clerk to call the roll so we can verify that we have a quorum for this meeting.
Councilmember Payne.
Present.
Wansley is absent. Vita.
Present.
Chuktai is absent. Vice Chair Koski.
Present.
Chair Johnson.
Present.
There are 4 members present.
Let the record reflect that we have a quorum. With that, we'll move to our consent agenda. There are 3 items on the consent agenda that I will read for the record. Item number 1 is accepting a grant from the state of Minnesota for the Central City Storm Tunnel Construction Project. Item number 2 is approving appointments to the Pedestrian Advisory Committee. And item number 3 is authorizing a lease with the Minnesota State Patrol for storage space at the Minneapolis impound lot. I will also note that we've been joined by Councilmember Chuktai. Is there any discussion on the consent agenda, or are there any items that anyone would like to pull for further discussion? Not seeing any, then all those in favor of the consent agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed say nay. Ayes have it, and the consent agenda is approved. And next we'll move on to our public hearing considering the adoption and levy of assessments for sidewalk repair and construction for the 2022 construction season. Director Anderson Kelleher, who will be presenting on this item?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. Larry Matsumoto, Principal Professional Engineer, Transportation, Maintenance, and Repair will be presenting.
Excellent. Welcome, Mr. Matsumoto.
Good afternoon, committee chair, members of the Public Works Infrastructure Committee. My name is Larry Matsumoto, and I am a principal professional engineer with Public Works, and I am here to speak with you on the public hearing for sidewalk repairs and recommend passage of a resolution adopting and levying assessments and adopting the assessment roll for sidewalk repair and construction for the 2022 construction season and the list of properties dated as June 1st of 2023. On May 18th, the City Council designated a public hearing for July 13th of 23 to consider assessment charges for sidewalk repair and construction that remain unpaid. Public Works completed its annual inspection and repair of public sidewalks in 2022, with property owners having the option of contracting for the repairs themselves or allowing the city to complete the work and bill or assess the work. For those choosing the latter, this action is to proceed with the process for collecting those assessments. A total of 1,228 repair orders were performed in 2022. All property owners receive a bill for the completed work. If the owner did not pay the bill, the cost of the work will be listed on the assessment roll and assessed to the property taxes as a special assessment on January 1st, 2024. If the property owner should choose to contest the work, they have the opportunity to appeal at an administrative hearing. Public Works conducted 5 administrative hearings, 2 in person at City Hall and 3 virtual. There were 12 appeals at that administrative hearings. If the property owner is not satisfied with the results of the administrative hearing officer's determination, they may elect to appeal at a public hearing before Public Works and Infrastructure Committee of the City Council. If they are not satisfied with the decision of that committee, they may appeal to the district court. This appeal must be made within 30 days of the adoption of the assessment roll by the City Council. A list of properties and charges to be assessed will be provided at the time of public hearing. The properties on the list to be assessed, which are on file at the city's engineer's special assessment office, had a sidewalk repair and construction work done in 2022 by the city sidewalk contractor. The amount to be assessed as a special assessment is a total of $965,336.73. The Minneapolis City Council has passed resolutions whereby deferment of special assessments may be obtained by showing hardship for any homestead property owner by age of 65 years of older or retired by virtue of a permanent and total disability, or military personnel ordered into active duty service. This concludes my presentation, and I am available for questions.
Thank you for the presentation. I'm going to proceed to open the public hearing, and I'll ask the clerk if anyone has signed up to speak. Seeing a head shake no, and I'll see if anyone is in the room here who would like to speak on this item who has not signed up yet. Anyone? Anyone? All right, I will go ahead and close the public hearing, having not seen anyone wishing to speak. And I will see if there are any questions from committee members on this item. Not seeing any. So with that, I will go ahead and move this item for approval. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. That motion carries. And our final item today is a discussion item, receiving and filing a high-level cost analysis of sidewalk, snow, and ice removal pilot projects. Director Anderson Kelleher, who will be presenting on this item.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Deputy Director of Public Works, Brian Dodds, and City Engineer will be making the presentation. There are many people who've worked on this, and I'm sure maybe they could raise their hand. So everyone, if you've worked on this project, raise your hand. Okay.
All right, thank you.
It was a fast
that.
turnaround.
Which we also appreciate as well. So thank you very much to the department for all their work on this item. And Mr. Dodd, welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair, members of the committee. Brian Dodds, Deputy Director, City Engineer, Public Works. Good to be here today. We're talking about the legislative directive from June, and this is the pilot cost analysis for a city-led sidewalk, snow, and ice removal program. So these are the pilots that were identified in the report that was provided. So just to kind of give a timeline, this is our more recent timeline, February 16th. We had a legislative direction from this body to provide a high-level cost analysis on city-led sidewalk, snow, and ice removal programs. We had a presentation on June 8th to the committee presenting that work, and had a follow-up legislative directive on June 22nd asking for some high-level cost analysis of the pilot projects included in that report. So we're here today to report out on that. And a future item that you will be seeing this fall will be yet another continuation of this work, an update to the winter maintenance study. So the proposed pilot programs, we just want to refresh your memory, they're in our report, the sidewalk, snow, and ice removal report, and that was presented. And these are the page numbers. It's the Senior Snow Clearing Assistance Program, our Snow Caseworker Program, Mobile Team, Authorized Contractor Clearing Policy and Program Changes, as well as the Snow Ambassador Program. I know that in the report was pretty well detailed, but we've proposed a couple minor changes on that and just wanted to keep the format consistent as we look at these different options. So kind of our assumptions in schedule and budgeting, et cetera. So we're assuming this is for a 2024 budget ask, so the funds would become available January 1st, 2024, funds allocated, funds available. So first quarter, we would hire staff that could work on these items. Second and third quarter of 2024, we'd be working on fleshing out these proposals, really getting them off the ground, really getting them started so that we could have a rollout November 1st, kind of the beginning of our official snow and ice season, and have them available and starting to serve the public. So all the numbers we're looking at are in 2024 dollars. We didn't include escalation, even though I've got kind of 2 years of costs in here. And additional support. And we have an FTE I'll show you in the table at the end, kind of additional support needed. If we're doing a bunch of these, we need more help managing it, running the numbers, trying to just make sure we're serving this program as best we can. And so that's kind of variable, and I'll discuss that a little bit later. I'll have a number of numbers in italics that can be scalable. Those are ones that can be scaled down. Some of these programs can be scaled up as well, and I'll note those. And our estimates are high level, subject to change. You know, we have not fully vetted out all these, and these are our best work here in the short amount of time to give you kind of a good number for what these could be. So I'll get into it. So the first one is the Senior Snow Clearing Assistance Program. And again, this would be grants to neighborhood organizations to provide or manage direct service to seniors. They provide snow shoveling equipment and some sort of wage to those doing this work. That's kind of the model that was identified in the report. And we believe we would need an FTE to kind of manage this program, make sure we're communicating well, tracking the data, making sure we're having a good level of service and the program is successful. And so that in the first line here, you'd see a prorated year one cost of hiring that person after the first quarter. And then the next year would be kind of the full loaded FTE cost. The contractual services here, this could be a sliding scale. And so we're looking at, it was estimated in the report, 25 different properties served in each neighborhood, $350 for each of those properties for the season. And so, it's less than $10,000 a neighborhood. This could be scaled up and down depending on this. So this full 900,000 includes the number that was in the report for 735,000, plus when we talk to NCR, these neighborhood associations, these neighborhood organizations, this would be a burden on them. And so we added 20% as kind of an administrative fee so they could have some additional resources to be able to manage the program. Okay. Next is the snow caseworker pilot. So this would be an individual that would go out with our proactive sidewalk inspections. They'd probably also be involved in other 311 complaints. They would actually be a touch point for those at the properties so they could talk to them. What are the barriers? Learn more about what they could do, follow up with them, and just engage with them on these non-compliant properties. This would be a great resource to get a lot more information about what are the barriers, what could we be doing in the future to overcome those barriers. And this would be, again, one FTE. We have that prorated personnel cost, again, hired in the Q1, Q2 timeframe. Contractual services here. We think they would need a vehicle, and so the equipment and the contractual services is the vehicle, then repair costs and ongoing replacement costs for that vehicle. Next item is our mobile team pilot. So this would be to basically get a contractor pool and hire a contractor, and they could go to targeted properties and work through issues that are seen out there. They would get information of what properties to address. We think the best vehicle for that would be through the snow caseworker program, is to have that person working together with these folks. So if they identified someone who's just not able, whatever the criteria end up being, but have them get connected and provide this service of clearing the public sidewalk. And this assumes 8 routes, 50 properties. Again, it's in italics here in the contractual area. This is very scalable for different sizes. We still think we need an engineer or an FTE to manage this program, and it could go up or down. And you can see 400 properties roughly that it could address. But it would ramp up through the season. For all these things, with our people that would start early, for this, we would probably be looking at what happened in the past. Could we do some pre-identification throughout the season so we can really hit the ground running starting in November? Authorized contractor clearing policy and program changes. So this would be a staff person, similar time frame for hiring, to look through our program, look through our proactive inspection, work with business licensing, work with just kind of all portions of the enterprise, city attorney's office, to look at different ways that we can incentivize the compliance that we're looking to see. Ultimately, we want to create a sidewalk that's free of snow and ice, looking for equitable outcomes, and so we can have everyone walking and rolling through our city without barriers. So this is just another way to do that. And finally, the Snow Ambassador Program. For those of you who recall in the report, this was a kind of a 2-year pilot. It's scalable up, down. This would just be 2 folks going around, maybe doing 20 miles of the pedestrian priority network. And if they see a property that's not compliant, they start and they clear it immediately. And they knock on the door, try to engage with the people that live there, maybe leave a door hanger if no one's there, and follow up with that property. And then the next time, if it's that same property that's not compliant, we would clear it and we would charge them the cost to do that. And just continuing working and engaging on that and just being a focused area on a section of the pedestrian priority network. So here's a summary slide of these different options. Again, you can see in italics with the senior snow clearing assistance program and the mobile team pilot. Things that those could be adjusted down most likely, but could be bigger too. The snow caseworker, we could get more of them, so that scale could be scaled up. Same with the snow ambassador program. Just a reminder here that snow caseworker is really a key element of having success with the mobile team pilot. And the last item on here is just support staff. If by chance we selected half or most or all of these, we would need additional staff to just help manage in the office, going out, doing some field checks, making sure that we can get the data so we're making data-informed decisions and continue learning. Every one of these will provide an opportunity to learn more about how we can better manage this system. So that's my presentation. Any questions?
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Dodds, for this presentation. Again, really appreciate the quick turnaround, and it has a lot of detail, and it's really helpful, especially as we're having these budget conversations. So I'm going to see if there are any comments or questions from colleagues. Councilmember Payne.
Thank you, Chair Johnson, and thank you, Mr. Dodds. The snow caseworker, I think you already mentioned the tight collaboration between the snow caseworker and the mobile team pilot. I'm wondering if there are some opportunities for, I don't know, synergies, that sounds a little corporate, but alignment between the caseworker and the snow ambassador program. Because, I mean, either way, you have people out in the field, and it's just a matter of, are they bringing shovels or are they bringing clipboards? And so I'm wondering if there's an opportunity to find some alignment between those three ideas, if there's like some cost savings in that regard.
Thank you, Chair Johnson.
And maybe, Mr. Dodds, before you answer that too, and just for the public and for colleagues as well, certainly when we asked for the tight turnaround time on this as well, it was also knowing that we might not have the depth on some of these. So you might have depth on this one, but I also want to acknowledge that as well, that some of these things probably need to be figured out more so with the benefit of more time. But anyways, Mr. Dodds.
I appreciate that comment, Chair Johnson, Councilmember Payne. A number of these items, there's overlap. You know, these are all seeking kind of different flavors of the same goal. And so, yes, they definitely, we could be grabbing elements of other ones and incorporating them. There is some flexibility. I mean, these are ideas. They can be developed further. There can be some cross-pollination between them. So definitely an opportunity to kind of mix and match and create a program that maybe isn't even presented here today.
No, I love that. It's the exact answer I was hoping for, because it's just this, I really like how we're, and I think I said this during the larger presentation, and I think a lot of people's eyes popped out of their head when they saw the price tag, but I think it's really important how we highlight that there are ways that we can accomplish that accessibility through a number of different approaches, and $40 million versus, you know, six figures is, there's some wiggle room we have to accomplish our goals, it looks like.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Chugtai.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also want to really appreciate that you brought this information back to us on such a tight timeline. Kind of going off of what Councilmember Payne was saying, you know, I see a lot of like the repetitive nature of the authorized contractor clearing policy and program changes, that pilot, and the support staff pilot as an example. And is there a way to have the support staff person or whatever that role looks like being, you know, ensuring coordination between some of these different pilots and also working within the enterprise on identifying some of those goals listed for this pilot. But that's, you know, one thing that kind of jumped out at me. A couple of questions for you going back to the senior snow clearing assistance program, the very first pilot that we went over. I think you mentioned it's these numbers are built off of 25 properties per neighborhood. Where is that number coming from? is it based on, the existing number of seniors in the city as that's projected to change over time? How did you get to 25 properties per neighborhood?
Thank you,
Mr. Dodds.
Chair Johnson, Councilmember Chuktai. We had some discussions with some of our neighborhoods that are doing similar work today. Bancroft's one example, and that number kind of seemed to be kind of a sweet spot for what's happening today, and what might be possible. The number could be higher, the number could be lower. We have different parts of the city. We have more seniors in some neighborhoods than others, and so again, this is scalable. And as it evolves over time, we'll really see more about what the need is. I think something of note as well is if we're working with the neighborhood organizations on this, some have more capacity to take this on than others. And so this would really be starting the work of having those discussions, working with NCR, who manages that relationship, and seeing what could be done.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you. And then the caseworker pilot, is the thinking here to have this pilot program be specific to any non-compliant properties or some of our more chronic violators, or both?
Chair Johnson, Councilmember Chuktai, yes. Again, the write-up in the report was focused on our proactive inspections and going with those teams as kind of a first priority. But if you look, if we hire this person, they start in March.
Yeah.
There'll be a lot of opportunity to look at what history we do have, what properties have been problematic. As we looked at the report, we had a number of 998. That's kind of our 1% of properties that have been most challenging. We have 660 that have a huge percentage of non-compliance. And so we could look at some of those folks that we've had issues with, those properties we've had issues with every year, and we could start working on those first. And so, yeah, we would definitely be looking at the higher opportunity ones and going from there.
Sounds good. And then last question specific to one of these, the mobile team pilot, based on 8 routes of 50 properties each. Can you just help me understand the 8 routes, 50, where did that number come from?
So that was, Chair Johnson, Councilmember Chuktai, that was kind of a scalable number, looking at what a contractor could perhaps do in a day. And so just kind of created 8 routes. We don't know what properties they would address. And so we would look at our data. We would look at the issues we're having at the time going over the next winter season. But that was just maybe it's about 8 routes. Could kind of spread across the city, having several in each area. So that would give us kind of a rough coverage of the city. Again, could be scalable.
Yeah. Okay. I really appreciate that. This is then, to be clear, not based off of the rate of noncompliance. It's more so what's feasible, reasonable, could work. Okay. Thank you. I really appreciate seeing some of these initial numbers. I know that this is based off of a lot of assumptions, and these numbers could change. Some of them, I know, like I think the Snow Ambassador program is one that's, there's been a little bit more thinking done on it over the past several months. So that one I know is likely a little bit more baked in. Regardless, I'm excited to see more clear cost estimates for some of these programs that we can look at funding in this upcoming budget cycle. And I know we're in the middle of July now, about a month away from the start of budget season. And so, I know I've shared this with Chair Johnson and Vice Chair Koski, and I feel like we've had conversations as we've worked together throughout this legislative directive process. But, I think I would love for this body and this committee to consider formalizing these programs and somehow including those as things we hope to see in the administration's proposed budget in this upcoming year. I know I would really like to see that, and I'd love for us to decide if that's a path we want to go down together. I know it's a little bit different from how we've traditionally done things in the past, but we're we're learning a lot about how we relate to our budget in our new biennial budgeting process. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Member. Vice Chair Koski.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. A couple questions. One, kind of just piggybacking off of Councilmember Chugtai, and I see we have someone from NCR here, so maybe it's them to answer this. But, and again, I know that you maybe haven't done a deep dive on this, but when we talk about the Senior Snow Clearing Assistant Program, and you said, you know, it's an estimate of how many neighborhoods have this capacity, do you have an idea of how many neighborhoods would have a capacity to do this? Or neighborhood associations?
Mr. Gallagher.
Glad I showed up.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, council members. Stephen Gallagher. I work for the Neighborhood and Community Relations Department as the manager of neighborhood programs. So right now, there's around 3-4 neighborhood organizations that are actually doing type of snow removal through different partnerships or volunteers. Right now, I think there's probably about 7-8 organizations that could probably step in to help out because they have the capacity of staff or a volunteer recruitment person and manager. So I think they could come in. But if we wanted to extend this a little bit further, I think there'd be some, we would have to do some training on some other organizations and increase their capacity overall. And that could take a significant amount of time through next year to do that.
So if I'm doing my math right, we're looking at, we have about 10% of neighborhood associations that would be able to kind of hit the ground running right off the bat, but would have some training to do with the rest of them, if I'm...
Chair, council member, in my estimation, that's what it would be, correct.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Next question that I have is just, you know, again, kind of on the same theme of the overlapping programs, and I'd be curious to know when the crossover with the mobile team pilot, like how much crossover do you think that might have actually with our seniors? Do we, you know, that we'd actually be covering some of those individuals anyways, and then maybe be able to see a decrease in the need with our seniors because we're still, you know, we're already supporting them in another program?
Chair Johnson, Vice Chair Koski, there definitely could be. We don't have specific numbers of what the need is today, and so we would need to get into it. I think you're identifying that there are overlapping services there. They're just two different approaches to accomplishing a very similar outcome. So they're two different strategies. We would just need to choose which or both or a blend to move forward with.
Thank you. And then just last question, have you guys considered or have a recommendation of where we would begin or which ones you would, I mean, I understand that you said the snow case worker pilot program would be helpful to have with the mobile team pilot, right? But would you say, like from your experience, where you would begin and what you would recommend for us as a committee, whether it's starting from all of them or if we scaled back to 2 or 3 or 4, so.
Thank you for the question, Chair Johnson, Vice Chair Koski. We work to provide just kind of an overall scrub of these numbers and these programs. We did not bring forward a recommendation today. We could work on that with you. You know, again, each of these will provide more data and provide additional services. And so I think we need to have further discussion on if we were going to choose one, and if you wanted us to be part of that conversation, we would be happy to join you with that.
Okay, thank you. I think that would be helpful, again, with Councilmember Chugtai and her comments about the budget, and I think that is precisely what this committee can do, is to work together to think about what would be best, but I think having your expertise and understanding would be helpful in that process.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Councilmember Wansley.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. Also had similar comments related to the budget piece and recognizing that I know there's lots of conversations publicly about the budget being tight, but from actually one of our budget presentations a couple weeks ago, we know that there is a surplus. And there's a bare minimum of, as I think Councilmember Payne mentioned, this is reaching under maybe less than $6 million, where we can actually, deliver targeted programs and start building that case around data. Because as someone who wholeheartedly supports a citywide approach, I would like to see evidence, as we've done, for instance, with BCR, to say, okay, if we're looking for a citywide service, what are the metrics of success? What's the benchmarks? And I think the things that you're providing here are the recommendations can help us to start getting that more specific data that's more hyper local, so we can actually track and know how we're scaling up and what we're phasing into. So I don't see this as an either or approach, especially when we have a surplus where we can actually fund probably all of these things in front of us that you've recommended through this analysis. And also in light of that, I will name this, and this might be related to our NCR folks. If we're talking about sharing the burden or responsibility for clearing our sidewalks with neighborhood associations, can't ignore the fact that we have neighborhood associations who are literally saying they're underfunded right now. And that's also been raised to our awareness repeatedly about the base level funding not being adequate for our neighborhood organizations just for the work that they do now. So if we're saying, hey, now instead of doing citywide work, we want you to join in to like personnel costs and help us clear sidewalks, that is definitely going to ramp up and escalate conversations with our neighborhood associations, and justifiably so, around what supports are we providing to them? Because I can't imagine that only 10 neighborhood associations would just see this and be like, yeah, nope, we're just going to stay there, and not the rest of the 60. And saying like, maybe we want to get in on this too, and also, have a role in making sure that our sidewalks are safe. So I'm thinking of that too, of we're having budget conversations or conversations in general around funding for our neighborhood associations, the impacts that doing something like, for instance, the SEER, pilot initiative, I know you factor in administrative costs. We might need some more scalable figures on that if we're saying like we want to invest in that, and just thinking of that piece as we're having this broader conversation around neighborhood associations. But I just wanted to also share support with Councilmember Chuck Ty, and really saying this committee has the opportunity, as we just did with our legislative department, to say, hey, this is a citywide priority. We know our residents want to see their sidewalks be cleared. They want them to be safer, and snow and ice is not going away. Here's the opportunity to step up and do that, even starting with this smaller menu of options as we build for something broader. So I at least wanted to note that, and thank you, Councilmember Chuck Ty, for all your work and collaborating with my office and our staff, also, Councilmember Johnson, to really have a deeper and more thorough conversation around how we can have some final or tangible products that we can deliver to residents, hopefully this year, to make this winter more manageable.
Thank you, Councilmember. I see Councilmember Payne.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. Yeah, both Councilmember Wansley and Chuck Ty kind of started touching on my question. But yeah, I was excited about this specifically as one of the co-authors, I think, with both Councilmember Wansley and Johnson around neighborhood association funding. And my question's a little technical here, but for the line item for contractual under the Senior Snow Clearing Assistance Program, is that just technically the grant dollars that would be going to the neighborhood associations? Or, okay, and then would we anticipate those neighborhood associations just managing, we'd have a fixed grant amount for this service, and they would decide, do they want to contract with a company or volunteer and have that just go to their kind of operational expense? Is basically our intention for them to have that flexibility? That's my question.
Chair Johnson, Councilmember Payne, we have not gone that far down to define the program that much. It was anticipated to be grants for supplementing their volunteer or neighborhood, kids in the neighborhood, folks that are looking for some supplemental work. If they want to employ a contractor, I think it's worth talking about. Haven't really landed on that hard.
Okay, that's perfect, because one of the conversations I had with Mr. Gallagher actually was around that base funding conversation, and how maybe we do have the keep the lights on base funding, which is what we currently have right now, which is not enough for operations. But if we had kind of different funding tiers, and based on those funding tiers, you're increasing your capacity and increasing your services that you're providing. And I could see this as being a component to that. So I just really like that this is structured this way. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Councilmember. I am not seeing anyone else. So really thoughtful questions, really thoughtful answers to the questions as well. For me, as I'm looking at this, I mean, the emphasis is on the word pilot. You know, this is about learning and trying things. And these are ideas that you all brought forward when asked to look at this municipal sidewalk clearing. And I think these are all really reasonable, great ideas. I want to piggyback off of Councilmember Chugtai's comments around this committee saying this is a priority. I agree with that analysis. I mean, typically you'd think about that, and it's not something that, at least in past years, that the council has really done. We obviously have some changes around government structure, and also I think even though we always want to consider precedent setting with things like this, because certainly we could say every idea or everything brought forward sounds great, right? But at the end of the day, budgeting is about making trade-offs and decisions. They can be really tough and challenging. It's also not lost on, I'm sure, anyone in this room that we're a winter city. You know, this is a really big deal. It affects everyone. And it's a huge issue right now, and it's not where it needs to be in terms of compliance, because there's people out there that don't fulfill their obligations for one reason or another. And this is something that I personally think, and from listening to many different council members over the years, that this is a fairly consensus issue that is of concern broadly to council members and to the public, and is something that I think this committee could say, hey, we have some interest in moving some or all of these forward in the budget, and that we'd hope that the administration, as they're making the budget decisions, as the mayor makes his budget decisions, that this would get included. I am sure he is very thoughtfully considering this information as well, that this is of value to him and his office as they're making these considerations as well. And so looking forward to working in partnership with the administration in seeing these included in the budget, because I think these all make a ton of sense, and we can learn a lot and then continue to iterate forward in order to get sidewalks to the expectations that I think, frankly, people have for them, of safe, clear, and passable. So exciting work, very thankful to everybody in this room and those that aren't able to be in this room today that were a part of this effort, and really appreciate that. And as Vice Chair Koski said, you know, our committee being able to work on what that next step is, and being able to have that discussion and come to some determinations here. So I want to recognize Director Anderson Kelleher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry, I wanted to get in before you. That was very well said. I just want to recognize my colleague, Director of Neighborhood and Community Relations, Karen Moe, is in the room, and we appreciate Mr. Gallagher. We appreciate her and her advice, particularly on the neighborhood piece and understanding what additional funds might be needed. So she was invaluable in that. And we also appreciate that she came to Public Works to show her support. So thank you.
Thank you, Director, and thank you, Director. Really appreciate the partnership and continued work. Thank you. All right, not seeing any other comments or questions. Councilmember Wansley.
Yeah, before I forget, I just want to have my vote be recorded for both the public hearing and the consent decree, as well as my presence at today's committee.
All right, thank you. Unless there's any objection from committee members, I'll direct the clerk to make those modifications. Thank you. And seeing no further discussion on this presentation, I'll direct the clerk to receive and file this report. And with that, we've concluded all business before the committee. So without objection, we stand adjourned. Thank you, everyone.